If we look at training videos of the Vietnam border guard, we can notice one very unusual thing. Soldiers aiming their Kalashnikov rifles have heavy water bottles, or sometimes even bricks, suspended directly from the barrels. What is this strange technique? And doesn't adding dead weight completely ruin the balance and accuracy of the weapon? A row of Vietnamese border guard trainees stands motionless, each gripping an AK pattern rifle that now feels anything but standard. Hanging from the front sight or muzzle, a plastic water bottle, sometimes a brick, swings gently, its weight dragging the barrel down and forward. The stance is rigid, feet planted, shoulders squared, elbows locked just enough to resist the pull. Every muscle in the shooter's arms and upper back strains to keep the sights aligned, fighting the unnatural front-heavy balance that turns a familiar weapon into a test of endurance. There is no attempt to hide the discomfort. Fingers whiten around the grip, and the shooter's faces betray the effort it takes to keep the rifle steady. The added mass exaggerates every tremor, every lapse in concentration. Holding a rifle like this for even a minute feels awkward, almost punishing. It's not the smooth, effortless pose seen in Western training footage, where rifles are stripped down and balanced for speed. Here, the gun wants to tip forward, dragging the shooter's arms with it. At first glance, the whole routine looks clumsy, even counterproductive. Modern tactical wisdom prizes lightweight, modular carbines, rifles trimmed of every unnecessary ounce, optimized for fast transitions and minimal fatigue. Accessories are chosen for how little they disrupt the balance. Ergonomics is king. The lighter and more controllable the weapon, the better the shooter's odds of quick, accurate fire. In contrast, these trainees seem to be making their job harder on purpose, adding bulk to a platform already known for its weight. For an outsider, the scene clashes with every expectation about efficient marksmanship training. Why would anyone want to make a rifle less stable, more fatiguing, and harder to control? The answer is not immediately obvious. The simplicity of the setup, a water bottle, a length of cord, a standard issue AK, only deepens the mystery. It's a method that dares the observer to dismiss it as crude improvisation. But the determination in the soldier's posture hints that there's more at stake than meets the eye. Questions pile up the longer you watch. Wouldn't hanging a bottle or a brick from the muzzle throw off the rifle's balance, teaching bad posture instead of good? Some shooters worry about barrel harmonics, convinced that any extra weight could warp the steel or create lasting damage. Others see the drill as a sign of limited resources, a shortcut for units that can't afford proper equipment, forced to improvise with whatever is at hand. The whole setup almost dares you to dismiss it as a mistake, a relic of underfunded training. But before we go on, let me introduce you to our sponsor. So, the practice of overloading weapons during training began in Soviet small arms doctrine, shaped by the demands of Cold War readiness, treated marksmanship as a test of both body and mind. By the 1960s, Soviet conscripts received manuals that prescribed more than just shooting at targets. Central to this training was the static hold drill. Soldiers stood for long stretches with rifles shouldered, sights fixed, and extra weight, sandbags, metal sleeves, or bricks, secured to the barrel. This was no improvisation. The added mass forced shooters into isometric tension, building the bone-supported stance and steady trigger control essential for accurate standing fire. Declassified sources, including the CIA's military training in the Soviet Army, document the importance Soviet instructors placed on these routines. Archival footage shows lines of recruits, each gripping a weighted rifle, while officers time them with stopwatches. The message is clear. Endure the discomfort now to gain control later. Every kilogram added to the weapon increases the demand for shoulder stability and mental focus. The logic is direct. If a soldier can keep a front-heavy rifle steady under artificial strain, he will handle a standard-issue AK more easily in the chaos of battle when fatigue and adrenaline threaten form. After 1975, As the People's Army of Vietnam integrated Soviet doctrine, these methods traveled across continents. Crates of Soviet manuals arrived, and advisors worked side by side with Vietnamese instructors, translating not just language, but the entire philosophy of physical marksmanship. The Vietnam Border Guard, responsible for defending remote and rugged frontiers, became one of the most dedicated adopters. With tight budgets and little access to modern training gear, these units relied on drills that required only a rifle, a water bottle, and a length of cord. The brilliance of the method lies in its simplicity. No electronics, no fragile equipment. A plastic bottle or brick, weighing from half a kilogram to 2 kilograms, becomes a universal training tool, easily replicated at a mountain post or in a muddy field without logistical strain. Official Vietnamese handbooks, such as the MATA Handbook for Special Forces, formalize the weight suspension drill as a core exercise. The instructions are strict. Attach the load, assume the firing stance, and hold. Instructors monitor posture and trigger isolation under strain. For the border guard, often operating far from supply lines and forced to improvise, this approach is not just practical, it is essential. Soviet doctrine provided the blueprint, but Vietnamese adaptation ensured its survival. Holding a rifle steady for a standing shot is a battle against your own body's limits. Every second spent with a weighted AK stretched out in front of you is a lesson in isometric endurance, the kind where the muscles contract, but nothing moves. Shooting, at its core, is an isometric act. The rifle must remain absolutely still while the shooter's finger isolates and presses the trigger. The water bottle or brick hanging from the barrel isn't there to punish or humiliate. It's there to force the body into the right kind of tension. The added load magnifies every flaw in posture. If a shooter tries to muscle through the drill with raw arm strength, fatigue arrives fast and the sights begin to wobble. Instead, the drill pushes the shooter to find bone-supported alignment. The weight drags the barrel forward, demanding that the skeleton, not just the muscles, carry the burden. Shoulders must lock down, elbows set at the right angle, and the core tightens to stabilize the entire frame. The deltoids and trapezius hold the rifle up, but it's the small muscles of the rotator cuff, forearm, and even the grip that keep the sight picture from drifting. The shooter learns to stack bone over bone, channeling the strain through the body's natural supports, rather than burning out the big muscle groups. This is not about brute force. It's about teaching the nervous system to recruit the right muscles in the right order for the right duration. Fast twitch fibers in the shoulder and forearm are conditioned to resist fatigue, giving the shooter a longer window of perfect sight alignment. Studies of isometric training in marksmanship show that this kind of static hold improves postural control and reduces sway. Vietnamese instructors monitor every detail, shoulder position, grip pressure, breathing, because even a slight collapse in posture breaks the chain of support. Over time, the body adapts. What once felt impossible, a steady hold with a front-heavy rifle, becomes second nature, and when the weight is finally removed, the standard AK feels light and responsive in the shooter's hands. The suspended weight acts as a silent instructor, amplifying every minor flaw a shooter makes. When a water bottle or brick hangs from the muzzle, the rifle becomes hypersensitive to movement. Even the smallest disturbance, a shift in breathing, a twitch of the trigger finger, sets the weight in motion. This is no accident. The swinging mass magnifies errors that would otherwise remain hidden, forcing the shooter to recognize and correct them in real time. As the shooter draws a breath, any uneven expansion in the chest or lapse in core tension sends a ripple through the rifle. The added load exaggerates these tremors, making them impossible to ignore. This immediate proprioceptive feedback teaches the body to minimize sway and maintain bone-supported alignment. The shooter learns to time their breath, holding it at the natural respiratory pause when the body is most stable. Over time, this builds a more controlled, deliberate approach to marksmanship. Trigger discipline is also exposed under load. With the extra weight, a rushed or uneven trigger press causes the muzzle to dip or swing. Mistakes that might go unnoticed with a bare rifle are now obvious. The drill isolates trigger movement from the rest of the body, demanding a clean, steady squeeze. Only perfect coordination keeps the sights on target. As a result, the stable window for accurate standing fire extends, and shooters gain the endurance and precision needed for real-world marksmanship. It is commonly believed that this grip is incorrect because it bends the barrel. In reality, there is nothing of the sort. The misconception comes from how harsh the drill appears. A plastic bottle or even a brick dangling from the muzzle, the shooter's arms shaking under the strain. For many, the sight of a heavy object pulling down on the end of a rifle instantly raises alarm. The image suggests abuse, a shortcut that must be damaging the weapon, not training the shooter. But the logic fails under closer scrutiny. This exercise is performed as a dry fire drill. No live rounds are fired, so there are no explosive gases, no sudden chamber pressures, and no rapid heating of the steel. The only force at play is the steady pull of gravity. The static load from a 1 kilogram bottle is trivial compared to the stresses an AK barrel endures during normal firing. Cold hammer forged 4140 steel, the standard for AK barrels, is engineered to withstand pressures up to 50,000 pounds per square inch in microseconds with every shot. The slow, constant drag of a bottle is simply not in the same category. What looks like a risk to the rifle is, in fact, a calculated challenge for the shooter. The drill's drama is visual, not mechanical. The barrel remains unharmed, and the real strain is reserved for the arms, shoulders, and mind of the person holding the gun. AK pattern rifles are built for punishment. The core of their durability lies in the barrel, a cold hammer forged tube of 4140 steel, chrome lined to resist heat, corrosion, and wear. This alloy, with a yield strength around 655 megapascals, shrugs off forces that would crush lesser metal. In live fire, the front trunnion and barrel assembly absorb pressures up to 50,000 pounds per square inch with every shot. That is a spike of energy delivered in milliseconds, repeated thousands of times over the rifle's service life. A 1 kilogram water bottle or brick, hung from the muzzle for a training drill, creates a slow, steady pull, a fraction of the stress endured during a single cartridge ignition. The static torque from the weight is trivial compared to the axial and radial forces the barrel sees when bullets rip through at speed. Even in the harshest torture tests, buried in sand, frozen, or fired until the handguard smokes, AK barrels show no sign of permanent deformation. Brief training intervals with a suspended load do not threaten the barrel's integrity. Chrome lining and hammer forging further guard against fatigue or microcracking. The myth of a bent barrel simply does not match the engineering reality. The AK is a service rifle designed for abuse, not a fragile match gun. For Vietnamese trainees, the water bottle is a test for the shooter, not the steel. On the other side of the spectrum, Western marksmanship culture has embraced technology as the pathway to precision. The Mantis X system stands out as a flagship example. This compact device attaches to a rifle's rail and uses a combination of gyroscopes and accelerometers to track every movement of the barrel during dry fire or live fire. Each trigger press sends a stream of data to a phone or tablet where the shooter can review a trace of muzzle movement, shot timing, and even the subtle dip or drift that occurs during a trigger pull. Instead of relying on muscle fatigue or proprioceptive feedback, Western trainers use these electronic tools to make the invisible visible. The app plots each shot on a digital target, highlighting where the shooter's grip faltered or the trigger press was uneven. Over time, the system compiles a detailed record. Deviation angles, milliseconds of movement, and even a score that quantifies shot consistency. This approach turns every training session into a controlled experiment, with instant feedback and actionable coaching cues. A shooter can see, in real time, how a small change in stance or grip translates into measurable improvements. The appeal is obvious: precision, repeatability, and the ability to track progress with scientific rigor. But this level of feedback comes at a price. A Mantis X10 Elite, for example, retails for around $250, not including the smartphone or tablet required to run the software. Training is no longer limited by the shooter's physical endurance or access to a range, but by access to technology and the ability to interpret complex data. For Western units, especially those with larger budgets and a focus on individualized coaching, the sensor-driven method represents the gold standard of modern marksmanship feedback. Water bottles sloshing at the end of a rifle do more than just add weight. They create a living, moving feedback loop between shooter and weapon. Each time the water shifts, the shooter feels the rifle's balance change through the hands, arms, and shoulders. This is proprioception in its rawest form. The body learns to sense and correct micro-movements without needing a coach or a data readout. The bottle exaggerates every tremor, every lapse in breathing or posture, making mistakes impossible to ignore. It's the kind of feedback that's instant, physical, and impossible to fake. There is a certain elegance in how little this method requires. A plastic bottle, a bit of cord, and a standard issue rifle. No batteries, no screens, no specialized gear. Any recruit at a remote outpost can set up the drill in minutes, and every shooter receives the same lesson. Your body is the instrument, and the rifle will tell you, through the strain in your muscles and the swing of the weight, whether you're holding steady. The cost is almost nothing, and the accessibility is universal. Where Western trainers reach for sensors and software, Vietnamese instructors use gravity and muscle memory. Both philosophies aim at the same goal: a shooter who can hold the sight steady and break the shot cleanly every single time. The difference is in the language of feedback. In the East, the lesson comes through the body, fatigue, tension, and the unmistakable feel of the rifle tipping offline. In the West, feedback is captured as numbers and graphs, translated by an app into coaching cues. One system is built on physical intuition and repetition, the other on precision measurement and data. Neither approach claims superiority. The water bottle drill is a masterclass in resourceful problem-solving, turning scarcity into a training advantage. The sensor-driven method is a triumph of technology, offering granular insight at a price. Both are valid answers to the same marksmanship puzzle, shaped by culture, context, and the resources at hand. In the end, the shooter's skill comes not from the tools themselves, but from the discipline to use them, whether that means listening to the slosh of water or reading the curve of a digital trace. Today, low-tech drills like these quietly shape the marksmanship of thousands of soldiers worldwide. As Western forces invest in digital feedback, Vietnam's border guards rely on muscle memory and biomechanics, proof that tactical innovation isn't always high-tech. The logic behind a dangling water bottle is simple. Discipline under strain is still the foundation of precision. What seems crude often turns out to be brilliant if you look past the surface. Share your thoughts below.